What's going on, guys? This is Sam. Today I want to talk about a huge new report from Bloomberg about the 2018 iPhones. They have a ton of new information about the iPhone X Plus, its resolution. The new iPhones in 2018 could possibly have smaller notches, a lot of exciting stuff to get into, so let's go ahead and jump in. So first up, I want to talk about some leaked images of what could be the iPhone X Plus's display. These hit the internet just the other day. It's rumored to come in at around 6.5 inches, which is absolutely massive. That's a whole 0.7 inches bigger than the display currently found on the iPhone X. This image is really interesting for a number of reasons. Number one, it's really early in the game to be seeing images like this, but in the Bloomberg article that we'll get into in just 1 second, they suggested that Apple is working with partners overseas to get models of the iPhone X Plus or models of the iPhone X display produced, sent back to Apple for testing. So it's very plausible that this image is real. The second thing that I found in this image that was super fascinating is the notch at the top looks a little bit smaller than the iPhone X's notch. And we've heard in a report from Barclays that launched a couple of weeks ago that I haven't talked about on this channel just yet, the new iPhones in 2018, especially the higher end models, the iPhone X version 2 and then the iPhone X Plus, could possibly have smaller notches. The True Depth camera system is said to be upgraded on those, and while we don't know if it'll be a dramatic redesign of the notch, it looks like something just a little bit smaller is definitely plausible for this year. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the possibility of a smaller notch down below. This is without question one of the biggest points of contention on the iPhone X. A lot of people love it, and a lot of people absolutely hate it, but we've heard reports that an Android P, which is the new version of Android coming out this year, they're reportedly going to optimize that software for phones with notches. It appears that notches are going to be a big trend in mobile phones in the coming months. A lot of people hate it. I totally get that. It's fair criticism because it does look weird at first glance, but at the same time, I like the way it looks. It's not that big of a deal to me, and a smaller notch on the iPhone X and the iPhone X Plus in 2018 would be a good thing, but not something that I feel like I absolutely have to see. This photo is a pretty big deal because it indicates that Apple is absolutely testing a larger screened iPhone, and that's something that a lot of people have wanted to see. For me, 5.8 inches is the perfect size, but if you want that 6.5 inch massive OLED panel, it should be coming at you later in 2018. Bloomberg dropped a new report today on the iPhone X Plus and Apple's general plans for the 2018 iPhones, and there are so many insane details in here. Mark Gurman, who's writing about iOS 12, iOS 13, about macOS 12.14, about the new iPhones, has incredible sources in the industry, and generally what he's been reporting has been coming true later. So I definitely put a lot of weight on these reports. It's not one of those unsighted sources, like the sources aren't mentioned in here, but they are generally very spot on when it comes to what Apple's planning to do in the future. So first up, the report talks about the iPhone X Plus. They say it's going to have close to a 6.5 inch display, which is really big. We've never seen an iPhone with a screen that big. There's been other phones from Samsung that have been at or around the same size, but never on an iPhone before have we seen 6.5 inches. And even though that screen is going to be 6.5 inches diagonally because of the bezel-less design that is going to be found on the iPhone X Plus, just like what we see on the iPhone X now, it's going to be roughly the same size as an iPhone 8 Plus as far as the body goes, which would make sense because this is roughly the same size as an iPhone 8 without the bezels on the top and bottom, and the iPhone X Plus will be roughly the same size as a body of an iPhone 8 Plus, but once again without those bezels. Now, usually we don't get a lot of specific details from these reports, but this one's a little bit different. Bloomberg reports that the current resolution in testing for the iPhone X Plus is 1242 by 2688, which would make it the exact same aspect ratio as what we currently see on the 2017 iPhone X. And I think keeping the aspect ratio the same is going to be a really good move because then developers can just develop apps for the iPhone X's design. Like, they don't have to work on one specifically for the iPhone 8, specifically for the iPhone X with that aspect ratio, and then a different one for a different aspect ratio on the iPhone X Plus. It'd be a lot of work, so it's a good move that Apple is keeping that the same, or at least should be keeping that the same. Bloomberg also says that the iPhone X Plus is going to have Face ID. For anyone hoping for Touch ID to come back, for the return of the home button, that's not happening. Apple is moving forward with Face ID, with that fluid motion system of swiping up to close apps on the iPhone X, control center in the top right, everything else using different gestures on the phone. And I'm a really big fan of that. I would argue that that is the best part of the iPhone X because the experience and the way it makes you feel when you use it is a little bit different than I've ever felt on other bezel-less phones. It just feels like every interaction is meaningful. So home button not coming back, Touch ID not coming back, Face ID is the way that Apple's going, and they are not looking back anytime soon. We have not heard anything about the price of this phone yet, and I feel like that's something that has been largely absent from this conversation. Everyone seems to want an iPhone X Plus, but if you recall, the iPhone X can get up to $1,200 with the 256 gigabyte variant. So a 256 gigabyte version of a 6.5 inch OLED phone from Apple Probably $1,400, $1,500. I don't think that that would be a stretch for Apple. This phone at the base model is already $1,000, so with a larger screen, maybe Apple only prices it $100 more. Maybe it's $150 or $200. I could see this phone being at least $1,300 for the iPhone 10 Plus version, which is a lot of money. Now, luckily, if you don't want to spend that much money on an iPhone 10 style device in 2018, you're not going to have to, because Apple is releasing 3 new iPhone models this year. They're coming out with the iPhone 10 version 2, the iPhone 10 Plus in 2018, which are going to be the higher end, more expensive models, but also a lower end iPhone 10 style device with a bezel-less display and Face ID. And that's an excellent move because not everyone can afford the iPhone 10. A lot of people that I've talked to, like, hey, I have the iPhone 10, are you going to get one? Or are you going to go for iPhone 8, iPhone 8 Plus? They tell me that it's too expensive, and I can't blame them. Like, I got this probably because I'm a YouTuber, not because I actually have $1,000 to spend on a phone. And that's a big problem for the iPhone 10. It's really expensive, and it has not done as well as Apple has anticipated. And I think that's just because consumers are telling Apple, we don't want to pay $1,000 for the new iPhone every year. And I think it's too much money. Like, honestly, it's too much money for a phone every year. If I wasn't a YouTuber and I bought the iPhone 10, I would be holding onto this phone for 2 or 3 years because $1,000 is a lot of money to spend on a handset. In the future, Apple is going to continue to offer these high-end models, but they are going to have a lower-end model as well with the same design of the iPhone 10. The display size is going to be either 6.2, 6.3 inches, so a little bit larger than the iPhone 10, but it's going to be LCD, so you will not get OLED on this lower-end, cheaper iPhone, probably costing between $600 and $800, traditionally like iPhones have cost in the past before the iPhone 10 was announced. And in further efforts to cut down the cost on this lower-end iPhone 10, I don't really know what to call it just yet, I'll just call it a cheaper version of the iPhone 10, they're going to be using an aluminum band around the device instead of stainless steel like what we find on the iPhone 10, and what will be also coming to the iPhone 10 Plus. So it's not going to be overall as nice as a phone as the iPhone 10. If you want the OLED, if you want the stainless steel, if you want the best of the best specs, you're going to have to upgrade to the iPhone 10. But at the same time, Apple is releasing a device that's similar with the key features like the bezel-less design, like Face ID, like a really fast processor, that most people I think will be really happy with. It's a really good strategy. Bloomberg called this out in the report. The iPhone 5C had failed in the past even though it was a cheaper iPhone, but it was missing key features. This is going to be a cheaper iPhone with key features, just not all the bells and whistles of the iPhone 10, which I think is going to be a really good strategy for Apple. There's a couple more details about the iPhone 10 version 2 and the iPhone 10 Plus for 2018 that this report also highlighted. Number one, both of these phones are said to have the Apple A12 processor inside, which is a logical progression from the A11 chip that we saw with the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8, iPhone 8 Plus in 2017. That processor is the fastest processor inside of a mobile phone, although the Samsung Galaxy S9 just came out. We'll have to see if that holds up to be true still, but if the Apple A12 is anything like the A11 chip from 2017, these phones are going to be unchartably fast. Last summer when we were in the iPhone 8 and iPhone 10 rumor season, we heard that a gold color option would be coming. We saw a lot of leaked dummies with these new gold color options that were more copper gold, and honestly they looked really great. I hope Apple brings that color to an iPhone 10 model in the future. Doesn't look like it will be on the low-end option, but Apple is exploring the possibility of adding gold to the new iPhones. They reportedly had manufacturing errors, so it could be coming to these phones in 2018, but the article does mention that they aren't sure that Apple's going to do this. They're exploring it, they're trying it, but they could run into issues again. There's one other feature that Apple is looking to bring to the second generation iPhone 10 and iPhone 10 Plus in 2018, and that is electronic SIM capabilities like what's currently found in the Apple Watch Series 3 with cellular, or dual SIM capabilities, and we've seen that on a number of Android phones for years now. It's a really good idea. If you're traveling a lot, you can have one local SIM for like Verizon in the US, and then maybe an abroad SIM for Deutsche Telekom if you go to Germany. You can have one SIM for work, one SIM for your personal use. There's a lot of functionality that could be added with that feature, a lot of value that could be added. Because I live in the United States, I never really thought about needing a dual SIM card setup because I don't travel a lot, and the United States, for where it sits, is like, it's the one country for a while. If you're in Europe or if you're in Asia, there's a lot of different countries pretty close together, so if you're traveling a lot, it would make sense to have a dual SIM setup or an electronic SIM so you could quickly quickly and easily change your carrier and still retain your cellular functionality. So I hope it comes to all of you in Europe and Asia. It would still be cool in the United States. There are benefits there as well, but definitely over in the East, it would be incredibly valuable. If you want to read that Bloomberg article in its entirety, of course, I will leave that link down below. None of that information is mine. That is all from Bloomberg, so make sure you go ahead and check that out. For now, it's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed watching, it does help me out. If you take a second to drop a like down below, and of course, hit subscribe for more iPhone 10 rumors videos in the future. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can head over to iupdateos.com/merch, get a cool shirt like what I'm wearing now. That would be incredible. For now, I've been Sam. I hope all of you are doing great, and I will talk to you in my next video.